Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we are taking a deep breath and turning our focus toward Myanmar. It's the largest country in mainland Southeast Asia, and, well, it's a place defined by truly astonishing beauty, but also profound modern conflict. When we look at the sources, you're immediately hit by this stark duality, aren't you?
Absolutely. You have the golden ancient kingdom, Burma, as we might remember it,
Yeah.
and then the fractured, volatile nation we read about today.
And that tension, that's really the heart of what we want to explore in this deep dive.
Exactly. Our mission here is to try and move past just the headlines, give you a more comprehensive understanding of, well, what it means to be properly informed about this really strategically vital nation.
Strategically vital, that's key. Just look at its location.
Yeah, geographically, Myanmar is huge,
Yeah.
and it's situated right at the crossroads of Asia. It borders major powers like India, China, Thailand, Laos, and Bangladesh.
That location alone tells you so much about why its history has been so, well, turbulent. It's like a land bridge and a buffer state all rolled into one.
Precisely. And while the military government officially shifted the capital, to Naypyidaw, that purpose-built city in the center, the historical, the cultural, the economic heartbeat that still really resides in Yangon, formerly Rangoon, of course, still the largest city by far.
Okay, let's ground this a bit. Give us a quick snapshot of the people, the culture there.
Okay, so population-wise, we're talking over 60 million people. And the spiritual landscape, it's just dominated by Theravada Buddhism.
That's the really ancient, sort of conservative branch of the faith.
That's right, practiced by nearly 90% of the population. This spiritual dedication, it really defines the Burmese identity in many ways. But, and this is crucial, we have to stress the immense ethnic diversity. The country officially recognizes 135 distinct ethnic groups.
135. That's a huge number.
It is, and it's a key factor, really, in understanding the nation's political history and present conflicts. Oh, and just practically for listeners maybe planning a trip someday, the currency is the kyat.
The Kayat. Got it. Okay, so if you really want to get under the skin of Myanmar, understand its soul, you have to start with the ancient history, right? And that journey, it really begins in Bagan.
Bagan.
That iconic image, the sprawling plain just filled with thousands of temples.
Bagan isn't just, a tourist hotspot. It was the actual seat of power for the pagan kingdom. That was the first Burmese empire, and it flourished incredibly between the 9th and 12th centuries.
An era of just unprecedented wealth and spiritual ambition, it seems.
Definitely. And you see that ambition reflected directly in the accounts from the time. Marco Polo, for instance, he was clearly just overwhelmed by what he saw.
He called it the city gilded with gold, didn't he?
Famously, yes. And that phrase, it perfectly captures the sheer opulence of that era.
The scale, too. The numbers are just mind-boggling.
They really are. Our sources confirm that at the peak, around the 11th century, estimates suggest the plains around Bagan held something like 13,000 temples and monasteries.
13,000. Let's just pause on that for a second.
It's almost unbelievable.
13,000 religious buildings constructed in, roughly 3 centuries? Why? Why such an intense, massive building spree? What drove that?
Well, it tells us a few things about power back then. First, it seems the monarchy and the elites were essentially competing for spiritual merit. Building temples was a direct way to acquire merit.
So the more temples you funded or built,
the more merit you gained, which theoretically guaranteed a better rebirth, a better next life. It was almost like a spiritual arms race, you could say.
So not just about pure faith then, but also a way for the ruling class to cement their legitimacy, show off their wealth and control over resources.
Exactly that. I mean, think about the logistics. Such a massive undertaking required diverting immense amounts of labor and economic output. It absolutely solidified Theravada Buddhism as the core spiritual identity, no question. But it also must have placed an enormous strain on the ordinary people who actually provided the labor and the resources.
A familiar story in history, unfortunately, and even today, how many are still standing?
Over 2,000 of those original structures still stand, which makes Bagan the largest continuous concentration of temple architecture anywhere on the planet.
Incredible. And among those 2,000, the Ananda Temple often gets singled out, right?
Right.
As the architectural highlight.
The Ananda is, it's considered a masterpiece, both structurally and symbolically. It's often highlighted for its beautiful gold plating, which makes it shine, as they say, like a jewel against the dusty plain.
When was it built?
It was completed around 1105 AD, so right at the peak of the pagan kingdom's power. Architecturally, it's famous for its perfect symmetry. It's built on a Greek cross plan.
Which was pretty advanced for Southeast Asia at that time, surely.
Incredibly advanced. It really shows the sophistication of the pagan engineers and architects.
And seeing that kind of splendor, knowing it was built without, cranes or modern lifting gear, it just forces you to appreciate the sheer dedication, the organization that society must have had.
And it connects right back to those core values we talked about. These buildings weren't just monuments. They were living embodiments of the nation's spiritual and political order.
Okay, so if Bagan represents the historical heart of the empire, then the Shwedagon Pagoda in Yangon, that's arguably the sacred heart of modern Myanmar, right? And we're talking gold on a whole different level here.
Oh, absolutely. The Shwedagon is the most revered Buddhist site in Myanmar. Full stop. Its age is almost mythical. Tradition says it dates back 2,500 years.
2,500 years.
That's the legend. And it's been continuously added to over the centuries. It started as a pretty modest structure, maybe 8 meters high, and grew to its current magnificent height of 99 meters.
Wow. And its power, its significance for believers, comes from the relics inside.
Yes, primarily. It's said to enshrine relics of 4 past Buddhas, but most critically, 8 strands of hair from the Buddha Gautama himself.
8 strands of the Buddha's hair.
That gives it unparalleled significance. And the material wealth that's been lavished on it, it's just staggering. The main stupa, the exterior, is covered in an estimated 60 tons of pure gold leaf.
60 tons of gold leaf. That's not just wealth, that's centuries upon centuries of devotion, of offerings. What does that kind of investment really signify today?
It's a testament, I think, to an unwavering intergenerational spiritual investment. It's just built up over time. And the details get even more dazzling. The very top of the dome, the T, as it's called.
The umbrella-like structure.
Exactly. It's set with thousands of diamonds, 4,531 diamonds to be precise.
Yeah.
And it culminates in a single massive 76-carat diamond right at the very highest point.
A 76-carat diamond.
It's like they're physically and symbolically raising their most precious material wealth towards the divine.
It's literally a beacon of faith, isn't it? Dominating the Yangon skyline. Now, our sources also mentioned a crucial detail about visiting the barefoot requirement.
Yes, that's very important. You have to enter the entire sacred complex barefoot.
Why is that so significant?
It's a simple act, but profound. It symbolizes respect, humility before the sacred space. It's about removing the outer layers, the barriers of status or material concerns, when you enter a place of such immense spiritual gravity. It's a mandatory cultural experience, and it really grounds you immediately.
Okay, shifting gears slightly, let's talk about the land itself. You mentioned geography shaping the culture. The Irrawaddy River seems absolutely central.
It is. You really can't understand Myanmar without understanding the Irrawaddy, or the Ayeyarwady as it's known locally. It is the lifeblood.
Not just a river, but like the spinal cord of Burmese history, running right through the country.
That's a great way to put it. It starts way up high in the Himalayas, flows south for over 2,000 kilometers, and eventually empties into the Andaman Sea. For more than 1,000 years, that river valley has been the undisputed core of Myanmar's civilization.
Providing water for agriculture.
Especially rice, the staple food. And crucially, it served as the main internal transport route. It's how empires like Pagan were able to maintain political and economic control over such a large area.
And that transport role continues today, right? Travel is still often dictated by the river.
Very much so. Many foreign visitors, when they could travel more freely, opted for the popular cruise route between Mandalay and Bagan along the Irrawaddy.
What's that journey like?
It offers this amazing window into traditional life. You sail past small river villages, areas with unique wildlife, including the quite rare Irrawaddy dolphin, actually. It shows you a rhythm of life that seems, in places, almost untouched by the chaos you find in the big cities.
Now, as you travel around, whether by river or road, there are a couple of visual cultural markers that seem instantly recognizable as Burmese. The first is the traditional dress, the longi.
Yes, the longi. It's everywhere. It's this comfortable sarong-like cloth tube, basically, worn by both men and women across all social classes.
It looks practical for the heat.
It absolutely is perfect for the hot, humid climate. But it's more than just practical clothing. It's a really powerful marker of cultural identity. And interestingly, it connects Myanmar to a wider South Asian tradition. Our sources note similar garments worn in parts of South India, Bangladesh, Assam, Tripura.
So it hints at centuries of cultural exchange across the region, even when Myanmar has been politically isolated at times.
Exactly. It speaks to those deeper historical connections.
And the second really distinctive visual marker is that yellowish-white paste you see on people's faces, particularly women and children, thunica.
Thanaka, yes. This is fascinating because it serves multiple purposes at once.
How is it made?
It's made by grinding the bark of certain trees. Locals sometimes just call it sandalwood, though it's specific types of trees with a little water on a special circular stone slab called a kayak pane.
And its main use is
Primarily, sun protection. It acts as a really effective natural sunscreen against that intense tropical sun. But it's also known for having beneficial properties for skin health, cooling the skin. And critically, it's used as a traditional cosmetic.
right. You often see it applied in quite lovely, intricate patterns on the cheeks.
Yes, especially by women and children. It's truly a defining feature of the Burmese visual landscape. You see it everywhere.
Okay, let's move from the visible culture to the more complex internal fabric. We touched on the 135 recognized ethnic groups earlier. That seems vital context.
It's absolutely a critical context, especially for understanding the current instability and the long history of internal conflict. While Burmese is the official language, and the Bamar people make up the majority, maybe around 70% of the country, is fundamentally a multi-ethnic society.
And the Burmese language itself, where does it fit in?
It's part of the Sino-Tibetan language family, so it's related distantly to Tibetan and Chinese.
The script is very distinctive too, isn't it? All those circles.
It is. The Burmese script is made up of these beautiful circular and semicircular characters. Our sources suggest it was likely influenced historically, way back, maybe around the 5th century, by scripts from South India.
But back to the ethnic groups. The sheer number.
The sheer number, yes. Groups like the Shan, the Karen, the Kachin, the Chin, the Rakhine, many others. It means that the history of Myanmar is just inseparable from the history of conflict between the central Bamar-dominated government and these numerous ethnic minority groups, many of whom have been fighting for greater autonomy, sometimes independence, for decades.
And these tensions are often concentrated in the border regions.
Often, yes. These long-running ethnic conflicts have fueled decades of civil war, displacement, and instability long before the most recent coup.
It provides a really necessary, sobering backdrop to the current crisis. But before we delve deeper into that, let's just touch on two very different kinds of destinations in Myanmar that offer a contrasting perspective. First, the Coast Ngapali Beach.
Ugh, and Gapali. Yes, it offers a stunning contrast to the heat and dust of places like Bagan. It's on the Bay of Bengal, in Rakhine State, actually. It's considered Myanmar's prime luxury coastal destination.
What's it known for?
Famous for its beautiful stretches of white sandy beaches, palm trees, clear water. And the climate is noticeably cooler, more pleasant than inland areas, so it became a popular retreat. Importantly, though, sources note it still maintains a strong local character. You see active fishing villages nearby, great local seafood restaurants. It's not entirely cut off from local life.
And then completely different again, high up in the Shan Hills, you have Inle Lake. This place sounds almost otherworldly.
Inle Lake really is a spectacle. It's a large, shallow, freshwater lake, high up, famous for the Intha people who live there.
And they live on the lake, right?
Literally on it. They've constructed entire villages on stilts sunk into the lake bed. Homes, monasteries, workshops, even floating gardens where they grow vegetables on woven beds of weeds and water hyacinth anchored to the bottom with bamboo poles. Everything happens on the water.
Amazing adaptation. But the most unforgettable image, the thing everyone mentions about Inle Lake, is how the fishermen row their boats.
It is completely unique. You won't see it anywhere else in the world. The Intha fishermen practice one-legged rowing.
One-legged rowing? How does that even work?
They stand, usually on the stern of their narrow dugout canoes, and they wrap one leg around the oar to propel the boat through the water. They use the other leg for balance.
Why do they do that?
It's incredibly ingenious. It allows them to stand up high, giving them a better vantage point to see through the reeds and spot fish in the shallow, clear water. And crucially, it leaves both their hands free to handle their conical fishing nets. It speaks volumes about the resourcefulness needed to thrive in such a specialized environment.
Truly remarkable. Okay, we've painted this picture of incredible spiritual depth, ancient wonders, unique cultures, stunning landscapes, but now we have to pivot. And as you said, this transition is necessarily jarring.
It is.
Our sources are very clear. To be genuinely informed about Myanmar today, you have to confront the profound difficulties shaping millions of lives, especially in the biggest city, Yangon.
This is that fractured reality we mentioned at the start. Since the military coup in February 2021 carried out by the Tatmadaw, The armed forces, the political and social stability has just disintegrated.
And the consequences have been severe.
So severe that Yangon has earned this shocking label from various observers and sources, the most dangerous city in Asia.
The most dangerous city in Asia. What specifically is driving that danger, that instability, in what was the country's longtime capital and remains its main hub?
It's driven primarily by the widespread civil disobedience movement against the coup and the military's absolutely brutal crackdown in response. This has led to constant, low-level urban conflict, widespread fear, targeted violence, and assassinations.
Assassinations.
Yes. Our sources detail specific incidents of targeted killings, often carried out by urban guerrilla groups or resistance cells, targeting military personnel, officials, or suspected collaborators and informants. The example cited on 17th Street in Yangon's Chinatown.
What happened there?
A man believed to be a military associate or perhaps a supplier was just executed in broad daylight on the street. This kind of incident illustrates the atmosphere of total paranoia and instability. It's not random street crime. This is political violence, high-stakes conflict playing out very publicly, creating an environment where people are afraid, where neighbors might suspect neighbors.
And this intense political climate must directly impact information and communication. Censorship must be rife.
Absolutely. The level of censorship and fear is incredibly high. The military regime moved very quickly to ban or severely restrict access to major international communication platforms. WhatsApp, Facebook, YouTube, Google, they're either blocked entirely or constantly monitored.
Which is devastating because those platforms aren't just for chatting, are they?
Not at all. For years, they became essential tools for daily life, for personal communication, yes, but also crucial for small businesses, for organizing, for accessing news. Shutting them down is a deliberate tactic to control information and suppress dissent.
So anyone inside the country, visitors included, if there were any, needs a VPN, a virtual private network, just to get online securely or access outside information.
Essentially, yes. A VPN is vital. And for journalists, the risks are even higher. Myanmar consistently ranks as one of the most dangerous countries in the world for reporters. Our sources put it in the top 10.
10th most dangerous.
It highlights the regime's intense efforts to control the narrative by silencing independent media and objective reporting. The free flow of information, which is already difficult, has basically been choked off.
So beyond the physical danger and the information blackout, what's daily economic life like for the average person in Yangon? It sounds like a real struggle.
It's catastrophic for many. The coup, combined with subsequent international sanctions and the general instability, has triggered an extreme inflation crisis. Locals are dealing with skyrocketing prices for basic goods.
Like what?
Our sources give the example of something as simple as a single cup of tea at a local stall costing the equivalent of 80 Indian rupees in local kyat. Now, that might not sound like much in isolation, but extrapolate that across all daily necessities for a family.
For low-income families, the basic cost of just surviving must be becoming unbearable.
It is. It's pushing many towards absolute poverty. And this economic desperation feeds into another major issue, the currency black market.
Right, the difference between the official exchange rate and what you actually get on the street.
The official exchange rate set by the regime is largely meaningless for everyday transactions. It might be officially pegged at, say, 3,300 CAD to the US dollar. But on the black market, driven by the real lack of confidence and the need for hard currency, the rate can soar maybe up to 4,500 CAD per dollar, sometimes even higher.
Wow, that's a huge difference, a 20 to 30% gain, maybe more? Why would people risk using an illegal black market?
Because they have to. For many families, especially those relying on remittances, sent home from relatives working abroad in Thailand, Malaysia, Singapore, that 20 or 30% difference isn't just a bonus. It's the margin between being able to afford food and medicine, or not. It's survival.
But it comes with risks.
Huge risks. It's illegal, so you risk trouble with authorities. And you also risk being scammed with counterfeit money, which is reportedly quite common. It just adds another layer of danger and uncertainty to an already precarious financial existence. It's a stark reflection of how formal institutions like the central bank have utterly failed the population.
And when central government functions are breaking down, basic infrastructure often follows. Our sources mention severe problems with electricity.
Yes, chronic power supply issues are a defining feature of daily life now. Power cuts are frequent, they're often scheduled, but sometimes erratic, and they can last for hours, sometimes most of the day or night.
That's not just an inconvenience, it must cripple businesses.
Absolutely. It forces almost every business, from restaurants and shops to small workshops and factories, to rely almost universally on private generators just to keep operating.
What are the knock-on effects of having generators running everywhere?
The environmental and health consequences are pretty severe. These generators are noisy, they spew diesel fumes, contributing massively to air pollution and noise pollution, especially in densely packed urban areas like Yangon. Imagine the constant drone and the smell from thousands of generators running simultaneously. It fundamentally degrades the quality of life and poses real public health risks.
Okay, let's touch on a couple of other, maybe more unique challenges of navigating Yangon's street culture that visitors often notice. One relates to hygiene and a traditional stimulant.
Ah, you must mean the chewing of pan or the betel nut quid. It's a very common habit, a cultural vice, you could say, across Myanmar and much of South and Southeast Asia. But the visible consequence is that users frequently spit the bright red saliva byproduct onto sidewalks, streets, building walls, everywhere.
Which leads to...
Well, it leads to pretty serious unsanitary conditions in public spaces, and those distinctive red stains are just ubiquitous. It's an immediate visual marker of, frankly, urban decay and a neglect of basic public hygiene standards.
And just getting around as a pedestrian sounds, well, terrifying based on the descriptions.
It is chaotic and can be genuinely dangerous. Crossing the road, especially major ones, is incredibly difficult. The prevailing driving culture seems to be that drivers simply do not stop or yield for pedestrians.
Yeah.
You often have to be quite assertive, almost stepping out aggressively into the traffic flow, just to force cars to slow down enough for you to cross.
And isn't there a weird issue with the cars themselves? Something about the steering wheel?
Yes, this bizarre historical quirk. Myanmar drives on the right-hand side of the road, like the US or most of Europe. But a huge number of the cars are actually right-hand drive models, imported cheaply, usually secondhand from Japan or Thailand, where they drive on the left.
So the driver is sitting on the wrong side of the car for the direction of traffic.
Exactly. It's a legacy of British colonial rule. They drove on the left, and the switch to driving on the right happened after independence in 1948, but the influx of right-hand drive cars continued. This misalignment means drivers, especially when trying to overtake, have severely restricted visibility of oncoming traffic. It undeniably contributes to the traffic chaos and danger.
Given all this, the danger, the instability, the infrastructure problems, what's the situation with tourism right now? Are people still visiting Yangon?
The sources are pretty stark on this. Essentially, no. The city is largely empty of foreign visitors. You see very few, if any, international tourists. Travel advisories warn against non-essential travel, insurance is hard to get, and the general instability just makes it unappealing and risky.
Which must be another huge economic blow for locals who relied on tourism.
A massive blow, yes. Hotels, restaurants, guides, souvenir sellers, that whole ecosystem has collapsed in many areas.
And yet, amidst all this chaos, this breakdown of formal systems, there's one fascinating sector that seems to operate remarkably smoothly, almost entirely on trust. That's the local gem trade.
This is one of the most striking contradictions, isn't it? Myanmar is world famous for its precious stones, particularly its high-quality rubies, sapphires, and jadeite jade. Mogok rubies, Burmese sapphires, they're legendary.
And the trading happens right there on the street.
In specific gem market areas in Yangon, yes, you see high-stakes commerce being conducted relatively openly. Traders, often just individuals, carry valuable gems, sometimes potentially worth hundreds of thousands of dollars in small pouches or folded papers, literally in their pockets.
And deals are done based on handshakes and reputation.
Essentially, yes. This industry relies heavily on a deeply ingrained, trust-based system that long predates modern banking or formal contracts. Personal reputation, family connections, long-standing relationships, these are the currency.
It's incredible. When the formal mechanisms of the state, the currency, law enforcement, economic regulations are unreliable or actively failing people.
These older, resilient cultural mechanisms of trust become absolutely essential. They provide the foundation needed for high-value commerce to continue even in the midst of widespread instability. It's a perfect example of how local, informal systems can step up when central authority collapses or becomes predatory.
Okay, let's move away from the intense pressures of the cities one last time. The spiritual landscape of Myanmar is also defined by these incredible, almost impossible-looking structures perched on mountain peaks or in remote areas. We absolutely have to talk about the Golden Rock.
Ah, Kaiktio Pagoda, the Golden Rock. Yes, it's an architectural and spiritual marvel that seems to just defy physics.
Describe it for us.
It's a Buddhist pagoda, quite small itself, built right on top of a massive granite boulder. This boulder is entirely covered in gold leaf, applied over centuries by devotees. And the truly astonishing thing is that this huge, gilded boulder sits precariously balanced right on the extreme edge of a sheer cliff face, about 1,100 meters above sea level.
It looks like a stiff breeze could send it tumbling down into the valley. How does it stay there?
Well, that's the heart of its legend and its immense spiritual power. The devout believe, wholeheartedly, that the boulder defies gravity because it's held perfectly in place by a single, strategically placed strand of the Buddha's hair enshrined within the pagoda on top.
A single strand of hair holding up tons of rock.
That belief transforms the site. It's one of the most important pilgrimage destinations for Buddhists, not just from Myanmar, but from across Asia. And the journey itself is considered a spiritual undertaking.
It's not an easy trip, I gather.
Far from it. Reaching the Golden Rock requires real commitment. It's about a 5-hour drive from Yangon, and then the final stretch involves either a long, arduous trek up the mountain path or a ride in these specialized, crowded, open-top trucks that ferry pilgrims up the steep inclines. The physical hardship is seen as part of the merit-making process, intrinsically linked to the spiritual reward of reaching the sacred summit.
Right. Speaking of strenuous climbs to sacred summits, there's another spectacular site that often appears in photos, Tong Kalat, sometimes called the Volcano Monastery.
Tong Kalat is visually breathtaking. It's a Buddhist monastery complex perched dramatically right on the flat summit of an extinct volcanic plug. This sheer-sided rock formation rises incredibly steeply, almost vertically, from the surrounding plains. It looks like something out of a fantasy film.
And the climb is part of the pilgrimage here, too.
Very much so. To reach the monasteries and shrines at the top, visitors have to climb exactly 777 steps, barefoot, winding up the side of the plug.
777 steps. Is the number significant?
The number 7 holds considerable significance in Buddhist numerology and cosmology. So climbing those 777 steps consciously connects the physical exertion to the spiritual journey. And the effort is immensely rewarded. The summit offers just stunning 360-degree panoramic views over the vast plains below.
I read that on a clear day, you can actually see the ancient city of Bagan in the distance from the top of Tong Kalat.
You can indeed. It creates this powerful visual link, connecting these two great historical and spiritual centers across the landscape, reminding you of the deep, long continuity of Buddhist faith in this region, spanning from the ancient kingdoms right up to the present-day pilgrims making that arduous climb.
Amazing. Okay, finally, let's briefly explore one more significant but much less visited site, the fortress temples of Maracu.
Maracu is really important, offering a different flavor of history compared to Bagan. It's located way over in the west, in Rakhine State, and it was the capital of the powerful Maracu Kingdom, which flourished from the 15th to the 18th century.
And it looks like a fortress, but isn't quite.
Exactly. When early European visitors saw it, they assumed it was primarily a military fortress complex, because the temples and pagodas there are characterized by these incredibly thick, bunker-like stone walls.
So they weren't built for defense against invaders.
Further study suggests that wasn't their primary purpose. Maracu is in a region that gets absolutely hammered by the monsoon, receiving huge amounts of rainfall, like 1.2 meters annually, and very strong winds. It seems these incredibly thick walls were actually engineered primarily as weatherproofing, designed to withstand the sheer force of the elements rather than invading armies. They're temples built for resilience against nature's power.
That makes sense. And getting to Maracu is also part of its mystique, right? It's quite remote.
It remains notably remote, yes. Unlike Bagan, which is relatively easy to access, the main way to reach Maracu typically involves a long boat journey. It takes anywhere from 4 to 7 hours, depending on the boat and the river conditions, traveling up the winding Caledon River from the town of Sittwe.
So that isolation has helped preserve it.
It definitely has. That relative difficulty of access has allowed Maracu to retain a much more mysterious, less developed, perhaps more authentic atmosphere compared to the heavily touristed pathways of Bagan. It offers a vastly different kind of experience. So, pulling all these threads together, what does this all really mean when we try to synthesize the information from our deep dive? I think Myanmar forces you, maybe more than most places, to hold two starkly contrasting truths in your mind at the same time.
So?
Well, on one hand, you have this undeniable historical weight and spiritual magnificence. You know, the 60 tons of gold glinting on the Shwedagon, the memory of 13,000 temples shimmering on the plains of Bagan, the deep cultural traditions like Stanaka and the Longi. That's one reality.
And the others?
And on the other hand, you have the brutal, complex, often dangerous reality of daily life today, especially in places like Yangon. The fractured infrastructure, the power cuts, the political fear and violence, the economic desperation driven by hyperinflation, the necessary evil of the black market. It's a completely different picture.
And we've seen that this kind of political instability isn't actually new, is it? It feels like a recurring cycle Myanmar has been trapped in, really since independence back in 1948.
That's right. Decades of conflict, military rule, brief democratic openings, then crackdowns again.
And that long history of struggle seems to have eroded trust in formal systems. But our sources suggest that the Burmese spirit perhaps relies on older, maybe more resilient cultural mechanisms to cope and survive.
Things like that incredibly strong, trust-based system in the gem trade we talked about, or just the unwavering communal faith that keeps people supporting monasteries and pagodas even amidst personal hardship. Those seem to endure when political structures fail.
So connecting this to the bigger picture, it does raise a pretty profound question, doesn't it? When the state itself is violently fracturing, when the formal economic system is failing large swaths of the population, is that deep, ancient spiritual devotion represented by all that accumulated gold, by the sheer number of temples still standing, is that a sustainable foundation for a nation's future? It's that tension, isn't it? Spiritual wealth versus effective governance and material well-being.
Exactly. So our final provocative thought for you, the listener, to maybe mull over is this. In a world where we're often drawn to the immediate, visible conflicts that dominate headlines, maybe we overlook the quiet, persistent power of tradition and faith in shaping a nation's resilience. How much of Myanmar's ultimate future trajectory is being determined not just by the political maneuver in Naypyidaw or the fighting in the borderlands, but by the simple, enduring fact that, despite everything, pilgrims are still climbing those 777 steps barefoot to a monastery on a volcanic plug, demonstrating an unshakable faith that has somehow persisted through centuries of turmoil. Maybe that deep-rooted resilience is the only constant that the people of Myanmar can truly rely on right now.